Jim, what sort of questions does one ask on a time like this?
We've been hanging on for 9 months and 14 days now.
The last positive sighting of the children was
The disappearance remains one of the nation's mysteries.
In the quiet suburb of Somerton Park, South Australia, the Beaumont family lived an ordinary life that would soon unravel into one of the most haunting mysteries in Australian history. Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont were the children of Grant, Jim Beaumont, a former serviceman turned taxi driver, and Nancy Beaumont, née Ellis. The couple had tied the knot in December 1955, and the family made their home at 109 Harding Street, just a stone's throw from the popular Glenelg Beach, a place the children frequented and loved. But on January 25th, 1966, during a sweltering summer heat wave, the ordinary took a dark turn. Jim dropped the kids off at Glenelg Beach before embarking on a 3-day sales trip to Snowtown. It was a routine day, nothing out of the ordinary, until it wasn't. The next morning, January 26th, Australia Day, the children begged their mother to let them return to the beach. The heat was oppressive, so Nancy agreed, and they boarded a bus for the short 3-kilometer ride to Glenelg. They left at 8:45 a.m. with plans to catch the noon bus back home. But as the hours ticked by, the bus came and went, twice, with no sign of Jane, Arnna, or Grant. By 3 p.m., Jim returned home early from his trip, and the parents' worry turned to panic. Jim raced to the beach, scanning the crowded shores for any trace of his children. Nothing. The couple combed the streets, knocked on doors, and questioned friends. But the trail was cold. By 5:30 p.m., they made the gut-wrenching decision to report the disappearance to the Glenelg police. What followed was a frantic search, a community gripped by fear, and a mystery that would endure for decades. The Beaumont children had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of questions, theories, and a nation forever haunted by their disappearance. The disappearance of the Beaumont children sent shockwaves through Glenelg and beyond, triggering an immediate and massive police response. Authorities scrambled to organize a search of Glenelg Beach and the surrounding areas, operating under the initial assumption that the children had simply wandered off and lost track of time. But as hours turned into days, the operation grew more desperate and expansive. Teams combed through sand hills, scoured the ocean, and swept nearby buildings. Airports, rail lines, and interstate roads were placed under surveillance as fears of an accident, or worse, a kidnapping, began to take hold. Within just 24 hours, the entire nation was gripped by the case, the Beaumont name echoing across headlines and radio broadcasts. By January 29th, 3 days after the children vanished, the tone of the investigation shifted dramatically. The Adelaide Sunday Mail ran a chilling front-page headline, "Sex Crime Now Feared." The once hopeful search for lost children had morphed into a grim hunt for a potential predator. The public's worst suspicions were taking shape. Had Jane, Arnna, and Grant fallen victim to a sex offender? The possibility loomed large, yet the official reward for information stood at a paltry £250, a sum that seemed almost insulting given the gravity of the situation. As the investigation intensified, a lead emerged that sent investigators racing to the Patawalonga boat haven. A woman came forward, claiming she had spoken to 3 children, matching the Beaumont's description, near the haven at 7 p.m. on the day they disappeared. Acting on this tip, authorities drained the haven, and police cadets, along with the emergency operations group, meticulously searched the area. But despite their efforts, the operation yielded nothing, no clues, no evidence, no trace of the children. The case was spiraling into a nightmare. What began as a search for 3 missing siblings was now a full-blown criminal investigation, with every passing hour deepening the dread that the Beaumont children had met a sinister fate. The community held its breath, hoping for a breakthrough, but the shadows of Glenelg seemed to hold their secrets tight. As the investigation into the Beaumont children's disappearance deepened, police uncovered a series of chilling witness accounts that painted a troubling picture. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Jane, Arnna, and Grant in Collie Reserve near Glenelg Beach, in the company of a mysterious man, described as tall, in his mid-30s, with fair to light brown hair, a thin face, and a sun-tanned complexion. The man had a thin to athletic build and was wearing swim trunks.
Have you any doubt whatsoever now that these were the Beaumont children? None whatever. Does the description that you were given this morning by the elderly couple of the man tally with previous description? Yes, in almost every detail.
Witnesses noted that the children appeared relaxed and happy, playing with the man as if they knew him. At one point, the man approached a witness, asking if anyone had been near the children's belongings, claiming their money was missing. After this exchange, he left to change his clothes while the children waited for him. Later, the group was seen walking away from the beach together around 12:15 p.m. The timeline grew even more unsettling when another witness, Miss Daphne Gregory, reported seeing the children with the same man approximately 2.5 hours later. She noted that the man was carrying an airline bag strikingly similar to one owned by Jane. This detail added a sinister layer to the case, suggesting the man had planned for an extended outing, or worse. The Beaumont parents were baffled by their children's behavior. They described Jane, the eldest, as particularly shy, making it highly unusual for her to interact so confidently with a stranger. Investigators theorized that the children might have encountered the man during previous visits to the beach and had grown to trust him over time. A seemingly innocent remark from Arnna supported this theory. She had once told her mother that Jane had got a boyfriend down the beach. Nancy had assumed she meant a playmate and thought nothing of it until after the disappearance. Further evidence emerged from a local shopkeeper at Wenzel's Bakery on Mosley Street.
A Morfordville woman who claims that just a year ago tomorrow, the Beaumont children came into a bakery in Glenelg and bought from her pies, pasties and cool drinks. They paid for them with a £1 note. I spoke with her again today, and she's positive that the children were the Beaumonts.
The shopkeeper reported that Jane had purchased pasties and a meat pie using a £1 note. This detail raised red flags for investigators. The shopkeeper, who knew the children well from their frequent visits, noted that they had never bought a meat pie before. More importantly, Nancy had only given the children 6 shillings and 6 pence, enough for bus fare and a modest lunch, not £1. Police concluded that the money must have come from someone else, likely the man seen with the children. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but they pointed to a grim reality. The Beaumont children had likely been lured away by someone they had come to trust. The man's calculated behavior, the children's uncharacteristic comfort around him, and the unexplained £1 note all pointed to a predator who had carefully groomed his victims. The case, already shrouded in fear and uncertainty, was taking a darker turn with each new revelation. In the early stages of the investigation, a key witness, a local postman who knew the Beaumont children well, came forward with a statement that added another layer of mystery to the case. He initially reported seeing Jane, Arnna, and Grant walking alone at 2:55 p.m. along Jetty Road, away from the beach and in the general direction of their home. The postman described the children as holding hands and laughing, seemingly carefree and unconcerned, despite being an hour late for their expected return. His account was considered highly reliable, given his familiarity with the family. However, 2 days later, the postman contacted police again, revising his statement. He now believed he had seen the children in the morning, not the afternoon, as he had initially reported. This inconsistency left investigators puzzled, unable to reconcile why the normally punctual and responsible children would be strolling alone, seemingly without a care, at a time when they were already overdue. Months later, another witness emerged with a chilling account. A woman reported that on the night of the disappearance, she had seen a man accompanied by 2 girls and a boy enter a neighboring house she had believed to be empty. Later, she claimed to have seen the boy walking alone along a nearby lane, where the man pursued him and roughly caught him. By the next morning, the house appeared deserted again, and she never saw the man or the children after that. Police were unable to determine why the woman had waited so long to come forward with this information, leaving her account shrouded in doubt and suspicion. In the months and even years that followed, reports of potential sightings of the Beaumont children continued to surface, keeping the case alive in the public consciousness. These sightings, though numerous, often led to dead ends, leaving investigators and the family grasping at fleeting hope. Each new tip or witness statement only deepened the mystery as the trail grew colder and the questions multiplied. The Beaumont children had vanished without a trace, and despite the relentless efforts of police and the community, their fate remained, and still remains, one of Australia's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The Beaumont case captured not only national but international attention, becoming a grim fascination for people around the world. In a desperate bid to uncover new leads, authorities turned to unconventional methods. On November 8, 1966, Gerard Croiset, a Dutch psychic, was flown to Australia to assist in the search. His involvement sparked a media frenzy, with the public clinging to the hope that his supposed abilities might crack the case wide open. However, Croiset's predictions proved inconsistent and unreliable, with his story shifting daily and offering no tangible clues.
Mr. Croiset believes that they played in a hole or in a dig out.
Daar is naar mijn mening een instorting plaats. Heeft naar mijn mening instorting plaats.
Yes, and that particular hole or cave must have collapsed.
Do you hope that Dr. Croiset succeeds, Jim? Oh, well, I mean, that's his belief, and I really appreciate him coming over, I mean, to find the children, but not the way that he says, because I don't believe that the children are dead, and I'll cling on to the hope until there's any evidence found otherwise.
Yes. Do you expect to meet Dr. Crozet, Nancy?
No, I don't, sir. Mr.
Why is that? Because of the published remarks about him more concerned with the children than the parents?
That's right. I don't think that Mr. I think it'd be very difficult for him to meet us. I think he's a very feeling man.
Yeah.
And I think that his main objective is finding the children more so than talking to us, perhaps.
Did you see him pass this morning?
Well, I've seen all the cars go past,
yes,
but I didn't actually see him.
At one point, Croiset claimed that the children's bodies were buried in a warehouse near their home, specifically within the remains of an old brick kiln. The property owners, initially reluctant to excavate based solely on a psychic's claims, eventually succumbed to mounting public pressure. A fundraising campaign raised 40,000 Australian dollars to demolish the building and search the site. Despite the extensive effort, no remains or evidence linked to the Beaumont family were found. Years later, in 1996, the same building Croiset had identified underwent partial demolition, and the owners permitted a thorough search of the site. Once again, the excavation yielded nothing. No trace of the children, no answers, and no closure. Croiset's involvement, while sensational, ultimately led to dead ends, leaving the Beaumont case as enigmatic as ever. The psychic's failed predictions only deepened the frustration and heartbreak surrounding one of Australia's most enduring mysteries. Nearly 2 years after the Beaumont children vanished, a glimmer of hope, or perhaps cruel deception, emerged. The Beaumont parents received 2 chilling letters, one allegedly written by Jane, and another by a man claiming to be holding the children. The envelopes bore a postmark from Dandenong, Victoria. The letters painted a picture of a relatively normal life, referring to the man who was keeping them. Jane's note, though brief, seemed eerily authentic, and police compared it to her previous handwriting, finding enough similarities to consider the possibility that it was genuine. The second letter, from the man, declared that he had appointed himself the children's guardian and was willing to return them to their parents. He even specified a meeting place. Desperate for answers, the Beaumont parents, accompanied by a detective, drove to the designated location. But no one showed up. The meeting was a dead end, leaving the family devastated and the case no closer to resolution. Sometime later, a third letter arrived, again purportedly from Jane. This time, it claimed that the man had spotted the disguised detective and, feeling betrayed, decided to keep the children. After that, the letters stopped. For years, the correspondence haunted the Beaumonts and investigators, offering a tantalizing yet elusive lead. In 1992, advancements in forensic technology finally brought clarity to the mystery of the letters. New examinations revealed that they were a hoax. Improved fingerprint analysis identified the author as a 41-year-old man who, as a teenager, had written the letters as a cruel joke. By the time he was identified, however, too much time had passed for him to face any legal consequences. The revelation was a bitter blow, closing yet another chapter in the Beaumont case without bringing the family any closer to the truth. The letters, once a source of fragile hope, were exposed as nothing more than a heartless prank, leaving the Beaumonts to grapple with the enduring pain of their children's unsolved disappearance. Bevan Spencer von Einem, was sentenced to life in prison in 1984 for the murder of Richard Kelvin, the teenage son of Adelaide newsreader Rob Kelvin. At the time, police and prosecutors publicly stated their belief that von Einem had accomplices and may have been involved in other murders. Around this same period, investigators also began to suspect his involvement in the Beaumont children disappearance. However, no accomplices were ever charged, and von Einem has consistently refused to cooperate with authorities regarding potential links to other crimes. During the investigation, police received information from an informant known only as Mr. B. He described a disturbing conversation in which von Einem allegedly boasted about abducting 3 children from a beach several years earlier, taking them home to conduct experiments. According to Mr. B, von Einem claimed he performed brilliant surgery on the children, connecting them in some way. When one of the children died during the procedure, he reportedly killed the remaining 2 and dumped their bodies in bushland south of Adelaide. Before Mr. B's claims, police had not considered von Einem a suspect in the Beaumont case. However, he resembled identikit images of an unidentified man seen with the children in 1966. Mr. B also alleged that von Einem had hinted at involvement in the Adelaide Oval abductions from 1973. In both cases, von Einem's appearance matched witness descriptions of the main suspect. According to Detective Bob O'Brien of the Adelaide Police, Mr. B had provided credible information during the Kelvin murder investigation and was generally considered a reliable source. Still, the response to his account was mixed. Some details seemed plausible and warranted further investigation, while others conflicted with known facts of the Beaumont case, casting doubt on the overall credibility. Mr. B's reference to surgical experimentation echoed coroner's findings in several of von Einem's alleged murder cases. While von Einem was known to frequent Glenelg Beach, where he reportedly spied on changing rooms and showed a disturbing interest in children, there were inconsistencies. The suspect in the 1966 Beaumont case was believed to be in his mid to late 30s, whereas von Einem would have been in his early 20s at the time. Additionally, the Beaumont children were much younger than Richard Kelvin and von Einem's other known or suspected victims, who were mostly teens or young adults. While such changes in victim profile are uncommon in serial offenders, they are not unprecedented. Arthur Stanley Brown was charged in 1998 with the murders of sisters Judith and Susan McKay, who disappeared on their way to school in Townsville, Queensland, on 26 August 1970. Their bodies were found strangled days later. Brown's trial, set for July 2000, was delayed after his lawyer argued he was unfit to stand trial due to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. He was never retried and died in 2002. Brown bore a resemblance to suspect descriptions in both the Beaumont and Oval cases. However, no evidence linked him to the Beaumont children's disappearance. Employment records that could confirm his whereabouts in 1966 were lost in the 1974 Brisbane flood, or possibly destroyed by Brown himself, who had access to government files. A witness claimed Brown mentioned seeing the Adelaide Festival Centre under construction, placing him in Adelaide before the Oval abduction in August 1973. However, no proof connects him to Adelaide in 1966. Additionally, Brown was 53 at the time of the Beaumont case, conflicting with witness descriptions of a man in his 30s seen with the children. James O'Neill, serving a life sentence for the 1975 murder of a 9-year-old boy in Tasmania, has reportedly told acquaintances he was responsible for the Beaumont disappearance. In 2006, O'Neill lost a high court bid to block the ABC documentary, The Fisherman, which explored his potential links to the case. Former Victorian detective Gordon Davey spent 3 years gaining O'Neill's trust before filming him for the documentary. Davey believed O'Neill was involved despite a lack of evidence. When questioned about the Beaumont case, O'Neill said, "I couldn't have done it. I was in Melbourne at that time," which Davey noted was not a direct denial. Later, O'Neill refused to elaborate, stating, "On legal advice, I'm not going to say where I was or when I was there." Although O'Neill claims he never visited Adelaide, his work in the opal industry required frequent trips to Coober Pedy, likely passing through the city. Davey also suspected O'Neill's involvement in the Oval case. However, South Australia police have interviewed O'Neill and ruled him out as a suspect in the Beaumont disappearance. Derek Percy, a convicted child murderer and Victoria's longest-serving prisoner at the time, was named as a potential suspect in the Beaumont case in a 2007 article by The Age. The newspaper claimed cold case investigators had gathered evidence linking Percy to several unsolved child murders, including the Beaumont disappearance. Percy, who pleaded insanity in the 1969 murder of Yvonne Tuohy, reportedly suffered from a psychological condition that caused memory gaps, leading him to speculate he might have killed the Beaumont children while in the area, though he had no clear recollection. On 30 August 2007, Victoria Police secured permission to question Percy about the case. However, Percy's age in 1966, just 17, makes him an unlikely match for the suspect described with the Beaumont children, who is believed to be in his 30s. Additionally, it's unclear if Percy had access to a car, which investigators assume the suspect used for a quick escape and to dispose of the bodies. Percy was imprisoned from 1969 until his death in 2013, ruling him out as a suspect in the later Adelaide Oval abductions, which many believe are connected to the Beaumont case. Alan Maxwell McIntyre died 2017, who had been investigated and cleared in the Beaumont case, provided a chilling second-hand account to the Adelaide Advertiser. He claimed that a man he knew in 1966, later identified as Alan Anthony Munro, had once arrived at his home with the Beaumont children's bodies in the boot of his car. McIntyre's children recalled mistaking Arnna's body for a boy's due to her short haircut. Munro, a 75-year-old former scoutmaster in 2017, was later convicted of 10 child sex offenses dating back to 1962 and sentenced to 10 years in prison, with parole eligibility in 2022. In June 2017, Adelaide police received a child's diary from 1966, allegedly placing Munro near Glenelg Beach at the time of the Beaumont disappearance. The diary's author, one of McIntyre's sons, was among Monroe's victims. Despite this, no evidence has ever linked Monroe directly to the Beaumont case, though he remains a figure of suspicion. Harry Phipps, a wealthy factory owner and prominent figure in Adelaide's social elite, emerged as a suspect following the 2013 publication of The Satin Man, uncovering the mystery of the missing Beaumont children. While the book did not name the Satin Man, Phipps's estranged son, Hayden, identified him shortly after its release. Phipps closely matched the description of the man seen with the Beaumont children at Glenelg Beach. Known for handing out £1 notes, he lived just 300 meters from the beach and was later alleged to have been a pedophile. Hayden, who was 15 at the time of the disappearance, claimed in 2007 that he had seen the children in his father's yard on the 26th of January. Additionally, 2 other individuals, then youths, came forward stating they had been paid by Phipps to dig a 2x1 by 2 meter hole in his factory yard that weekend for unknown reasons. These revelations cast further suspicion on Phipps, though no conclusive evidence has ever linked him to the crime. In 1990, June Cox, a 51-year-old woman from Australia, came forward claiming she had been receiving psychic visions and messages from the Beaumont children. Cox said the children had been communicating with her over the course of many years and had revealed to her that their bodies were buried on Crown land near the Maiponga Reservoir in the Adelaide Hills.
The police underwater recovery squad will soon investigate a clairvoyant's predictions of where the missing Beaumont children are hidden at the Maiponga Reservoir. The clairvoyant, June Cox, is now advising the Major Crime Squad and today told police they're looking in the wrong area.
Cox's claims reignited public interest in the case. She also connected the Beaumont children's disappearance to several other infamous crimes in South Australia, including the 1973 abduction of Kirsty Gordon and Joanne Ratcliffe, the 1972 drowning of Dr. George Duncan, and the 1979 murder of Alan Barnes.
That they have actually now said, okay, come down here, wander around, and when you feel certain, then approach us again.
Her story drew both media attention and police scrutiny. South Australian authorities agreed to follow up on her statements and conducted investigations in the area she identified. Despite these efforts, no evidence was found to support her claims. No remains were located, and the case remained as cold and mysterious as ever. Cox's involvement added to a long list of theories and supposed leads that have surfaced over the decades. Other psychics, including Dutch clairvoyant Gerard Croiset, had also been consulted in earlier years without success. While some believed Cox's sincerity, many remained skeptical, criticizing the reliance on psychics for potentially diverting focus from more grounded investigative methods. Ultimately, June Cox's revelations did not bring any resolution to the case, which continues to haunt Australia to this day as one of the country's most enduring and tragic mysteries. In November 2013, a section of a factory in North Plympton, once owned by Harry Phipps, became the focus of a major excavation effort. Investigators targeted a 1-meter squared area after ground-penetrating radar detected a small anomaly, which could indicate soil disturbance or buried objects. Despite the promising lead, the dig uncovered no evidence related to the Beaumont case, and the investigation at the site was closed. 5 years later, on 22nd January 2018, Adelaide detectives announced they would revisit the factory site for further excavations. This decision followed a private investigation sponsored by Channel 7 in Adelaide. On the 2nd of February 2018, a 9-hour excavation took place, but the search yielded only animal bones and general rubbish, with no connection to the Beaumont children. In February 2025, spurred by new evidence, South Australian MP Frank Pangallo organized a third excavation at the site, this time privately funded. The week-long search, conducted with heightened hope and advanced technology, ultimately proved fruitless. No remains of the children were found, leaving the Beaumont case as unresolved as ever and the mystery of their disappearance still haunting the community. During the investigation, the Beaumont parents received widespread sympathy from the Australian public. They stayed in their Somerton Park home, with Nancy clinging to hope that the children would return, fearing it would be dreadful if they came back to an empty house. Over the years, they cooperated fully with authorities, exploring every lead, from claims the children were taken by a cult and living in New Zealand, Melbourne, or Tasmania, to tips about possible burial sites. Their hope was shattered in 1990 when newspapers published computer-generated images of the children as adults against their wishes, sparking a wave of public empathy. The couple later divorced and lived separately, seeking privacy after decades of public scrutiny. They sold their home, though police kept track of their new addresses as the case remained open. Eventually, they accepted that the truth might never be found. Nancy died in an Adelaide nursing home on the 16th of September 2019, aged 92, and Grant passed away on the 9th of April 2023, aged 97. Their deaths marked the end of a lifelong search, leaving the mystery of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont unresolved. South Australian Premier Jay Weatherill emphasized that South Australia Police had never given up on the case, noting their policy that no murder investigation is ever closed. The state government continues to offer a $1 million Australian dollar reward for information that could shed light on the children's disappearance, underscoring the ongoing commitment to solving the case. The disappearance of the Beaumont children is widely regarded as a pivotal moment in Australian social history, fundamentally altering how parents supervised their children. At the time, it was not uncommon for children to travel unsupervised, and the Beaumonts' decision to let their children go to the beach alone was seen as normal and safe. However, this case, along with other high-profile crimes like the 1960 Graham Thorne kidnapping and the 1965 Wanda Beach murders, marked a turning point in Australian society. These events collectively signaled an end of innocence in post-war Australia, leading to a heightened awareness of child safety and a shift in parenting norms. The Beaumont case continues to captivate the public and media, its significance in Australian criminal history, ensuring it remains a topic of intense interest. New leads and theories are regularly reported, and the story frequently resurfaces in headlines, documentaries, and true crime discussions more than half a century later. The enduring mystery of what happened to Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont ensures that their story remains a haunting and unresolved chapter in Australia's collective memory.